Radical acceptance is a skill that is often used in a form of psychotherapy called Dialectical Behavior Therapy, or DBT. The idea behind radical acceptance is that life is, unfortunately, full of painful experiences. As humans, we are going to experience heartbreak, grief, arguments, disappointment, and all sorts of unpleasant things that are out of our control. And in those difficult moments, we have a choice. We can choose to accept our reality without judgment, or we can choose to fight our reality and make ourselves even more miserable. Radical acceptance teaches us that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. In today's video, we are going to dive deeper into radical acceptance and how you can use this skill to manage crappy situations and emotions that are out of your control. And if you stick around until the end of the video, I'm going to give you 4 easy techniques to start practicing radical acceptance right away. But first, if you are new here, welcome. My name is Ramsey Dean. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and you're watching Therapy Tidbits, the series where we break down therapy concepts into bite-sized, easy-to-digest chunks. Have you ever been stuck in traffic and you start to get really angry? You have thoughts such as, this isn't fair, or it shouldn't be this way, or why won't these people just move out of the way? You start to basically throw a hissy fit. Maybe you even drive aggressively or tailgate the person in front of you. But no matter what you do, the traffic isn't going away. Your non-acceptance of the traffic, that hissy fit that you throw, that's what's really causing your suffering, not the traffic itself. Radical acceptance tells us that we can accept the reality that we are stuck in traffic even if we don't like it. Now, just to be clear, radical acceptance doesn't mean that we just roll over and become life's doormat. Acceptance does not mean approval or that we have to tolerate abuse or mistreatment. If you have the power to change your situation, then you absolutely should take steps to do that. But in order to change your circumstances, you first have to accept them. Let me give you another example. Let's say that you've been in a relationship for years with someone who constantly cheats on you and treats you like crap. You have thoughts like, they shouldn't treat me this way. They need to change. This isn't fair. And while you might be right, the bottom line is your non-acceptance is keeping you stuck. You're ignoring the evidence in front of you that's clearly indicating this person is not likely to change their behavior. But because you can't accept your reality, you can't accept the facts of your life, you stay stuck, and you cause a painful situation to turn into needless suffering. In order to change our reality, we first have to accept it. Change always starts with acceptance. Now, before you freak out at me in the comments, I'm not saying it's your fault if someone causes you harm. But what I am saying is that life is painful. That is a fact. Radical acceptance is about taking your power back and saying, yes, this sucks, but I'm not gonna make it suck more than it has to. Instead, I will accept my reality in this present moment and acknowledge that I can't do anything to change the circumstances that got me here. But I can learn and grow, and I can, perhaps, change the next moment. We can't radically accept the future. It hasn't happened yet. But we can accept our current reality and the past. When we make the conscious decision to accept the facts of our reality, we are essentially making the commitment that life is worth living anyways, even though it's painful sometimes. And that commitment to keep forging ahead and to stop resisting what is, that is radical acceptance. I'm gonna give you 4 easy exercises you can try to start practicing radical acceptance in your daily life right away. But before I can do that, you've gotta learn to catch yourself in the act. You cannot start practicing radical acceptance until you learn to recognize when you are fighting against reality. Start noticing when you feel bitter or angry or have thoughts like, why me? It shouldn't be this way. It's not fair. Really strong emotions, especially anger or thoughts like the ones I just mentioned, are all pretty good clues that you are in a state of non-acceptance. I suggest spending a week or two just catching yourself in the act, and anytime you notice yourself resisting reality, jot it down in a journal or in the notes app on your phone. This will help you gain insight into the types of situations that you tend to struggle accepting. Once you've mastered catching yourself in the act, then go ahead and move on to any of the tips I am about to share. All right, number 1 is to use radical acceptance coping statements. These are basically mantras that you can say to yourself when you are struggling to accept your reality. These could be anything you want them to be, but some examples are, it's no use fighting the past. The present is the only moment I can control, or this is the way it has to be. Try using these coping statements in hard moments to remind yourself that you can indeed accept your reality. Number 2 is opposite action. This is where you do the opposite of what your emotions are telling you to do. Make a list of all the things you would do or not do if you were in a state of acceptance, and then go ahead and behave intentionally that way. For example, if I'm late to work, I'm not going to yell or get angry or tailgate the person in front of me. If I have accepted my current circumstances, I'm probably going to call the office and let them know I'm running late. And then I might listen to a podcast, relax, and just enjoy the rest of my ride. Or maybe I call a friend, listen to some of my favorite music. Now, there might be consequences when I get to work, but remember, you can only radically accept the present moment. We're not worried about the future. The goal is to simply not make a crappy situation any worse than it needs to be. Number 3 is to practice with less painful situations. Radical acceptance is a skill that can be used for the entire continuum of pain in life. So everything from small situations such as traffic to very hard things like grief and loss, and everything in between. But when you are new to the skill, it's going to be hard to accept things that are very painful. So start with something small. I want you to sit and remember an unpleasant event that happened in your life, one that is not too upsetting. And as you sit and remember all the details, practice being non-judgmental, relaxing and just accepting that situation in its entirety for all that it was. You can also practice by reading or watching the news or something controversial or political, and again, just focus on not being judgmental and just accepting it as it is. The more you practice radical acceptance when the stakes are lower, it will be easier to use the skill when you are in serious distress. The last exercise, number 4, is to use willing hands. To do this, just take your hands and turn your palms up to the sky. Now, this might sound a little woo-woo, but there is truly something psychological that happens when you use willing hands. Sometimes we are just not willing to accept. That can honestly be half the battle. We might know that the bitterness and the anger and the resentment aren't helping, but we just aren't willing to do something different. Using willing hands sends a message to your brain that you are open to change. I personally find that willing hands works better for me if I combine it with a few deep breaths or use it in conjunction with coping statements. So let me demonstrate. This is the way it has to be. It might seem a little strange, but I'm telling you, give it a try. You might just be surprised. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode of Therapy Tidbits. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you found the video helpful, and I'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.